518 East Madison Street, where my granddad and grandmother Freshcorn lived, Mike and Mary. Mike built this garage, brought it out to the street. He laid all these bricks and built a garage. There was no garage here before. I think it's a 1 or 2 car back-to-back garage. I used to spend at least a week or 2 every summer with my grandparents, and my grandmother and grandfather would go to work and leave me at home alone. And I spent many hours at that first window where there was a little table writing letters to Kathy McElroy, to my mother at Conneaut Lake, and just reading books. I read a lot of books and wrote a lot of letters, and I credit that with my great letter writing skills today. This used to be a huge staircase, and it's clearly shrunk enormously. And we would go in the side door there into the porch, and then from there into the living room. It's a side hall colonial. Had a lot of fun with their dog, Jolie, and Gigi, the 2 dogs. And we're in their backyard. They had lovely neighbors next door who copied Granddad's idea of building the garage. Had a lot of fun memories here. It was a great place. Say 1961 or 2 through 70, 69, 70. We'd come and spend a week every summer, at least a week, and hung out with my cousin Sue Ann. And my grandmother took me shopping. She made me try on every dress in every store.
Was she working?
Yeah, she was working at the time, so I would come here and I had to bring my own puzzles and games, and I was a latchkey kid. I never wanted to leave. I got sick here one year at Thanksgiving. We came out, and my dad and mother gave me money to walk 6 blocks down to the drugstore to buy my own medicine. And I didn't get better when I was taking the medicine. I walked with Sue and Mike, my cousins, and I ended up in the hospital that night. In fact, I ended up in the hospital because I had pneumonia. And my parents loved me so much, they left me in the hospital and went back to New Jersey with my brothers. I did recover, but I was there a long time. It felt like a very, very long time. And my grandparents were working, so I got to know the nurses in the hospital very well as an abandoned child. She worked winding motors. He worked for the steel mill for Spangs, S-P-A-N-G-S. Mm-hmm. And my Aunt Sarah lived with Uncle Claude, around the corner. And I have fond memories of them coming up at night and playing cards with my grandparents and me. Sue and Mike and Jerry and Rick and Skip would come in. So I spent a lot of time with them. I went out to Aliquippa to spend time with them and their friends. And Jerry's in-laws lived down around the street here too, before they moved to Florida. The porch was open for a while. They really cool corncob pipe vine, and the flower that grew on it looked like a corncob pipe. And if you broke it off and took all the leaves off, you could pretend you were smoking a pipe. My mother's friend lived in the backyard. My mother and Jerry grew up in this house. This is where my mother was sick with St. Vitus dance and rheumatic fever. Her best friend Dodie Sowash lived in the backyard behind them. I think they bought this house somewhere in the 40s, and then they sold it to Jerry and Don in like the 80s, late 80s or 90s. So Jerry and Don lived here for a while. They went to Florida, to Pinellas Park, outside of Tampa St. Pete.
Okay, and the Pearsons owned this until they moved to their current location?
Right, on Craig Street in New Brighton. And we're on our way to Jerry's birthday party now.
Your grandpa, grandma, they lived on East Madison Street?
East Madison Street, right.
Did you spend a lot of time there with them?
Often, yes. Yeah, we were there a lot.
On our way in, we were a few minutes late. Cindy had a detour, and I filmed a little bit of her and her remembrances of summers being at her grandparents' house
Yeah.
on East Madison.
Well, there were a lot of good times at that house on East Madison. I could give you a lot of stories about that. One was, this was when I was older, Granddad was going to remodel the bathroom upstairs. So we were taking out the old cast iron tub. And we got it out into the hallway. And then the landing came down probably 4 or 5 steps, then made a 90-degree turn to the left. And then it went down the rest of the way. I'd say the ceilings in that house were probably 9 foot. So there was a fair number of steps yet to go. And then at the bottom, if you were coming down the steps on the left-hand side, the last 4 or 5 feet had a wooden railing. So we were taking that cast iron bathtub out. We got it down onto the first landing, and Granddad was below the tub, and I was above it. And we got it turned around, and then he said, "Okay, give it a little bit of a push," and I did, and that tub took off down the steps. It was, I mean, that was smooth porcelain on cast iron, and it went down those steps lickety-split. Granddad, the only thing he could do was get out of the way. So he ran down the steps even faster than the tub was chasing him. And that tub took out that little wooden railing at the bottom.
I could just imagine.
And it was kind of a good thing it did, otherwise it would have smashed the door. And it didn't do any damage to the door that I recall. That was one adventure.
Wow. Lucky nobody got hurt.
Very fortunate, yeah. Those cast iron tubs are very heavy, and it would have run right over them.
So subsequently, your grandparents decided to move to Florida. And did they then sell the house to your mom and dad?
Well, one time they had 3 houses. They had the one at Cognac Lake, they had the one in Rochester, and the one in Florida. And they decided the 3 houses was one house too many. So that's when they sold the house to my parents. So my parents moved from Raccoon Township into Rochester. And I said, well, I have a teaching job now. I have the garden all planted. I'm just going to buy this house. So that's how I ended up owning the house on the Holt Road.